Thank you for the invitation to come here at your center and present this effort that we started jointly, the United States and Japan together, in order to promote what we say, powering the future and internationalizing research. Today I will talk about the world premiere initiative, WPI, which is a major program of the Japan Ministry of Education, Culture, Technology, Sports and Science. And the purpose of this initiative, the WPI initiative, is to establish an international research environment within Japan, to internationalize the Japanese university culture, in other words, to advance cutting-edge interdisciplinary research and fusion, as we call, to fuse the disciplines, and at the same time, to reform the Japanese university system and change the culture within which research is carried out. And this is related, this is concerned with criteria for faculty hiring, promotion, compensation, much in the same way as it is happening at major US universities like Stanford or the University of Illinois. I'd like to emphasize that the official language of this institute is English. Although this institute is located in Japan, inside the Ito campus of Kyushu University, the official language is English. The administrative staff, the secretaries are talking English there. The WPI centers are spread throughout Japan. Those are, right now, they are 10 centers throughout the entire Japan. Our center here, the International Institute for Carbon Neutral Energy Research, is at Kyushu University, which is next to the city of Fukuoka. And those centers that have been established are listed here. Those are the first 6 centers that were established in 2007. And all centers are within major Japanese universities, and each one is dedicated to a specific discipline. For instance, the Institute for the Physics and Mathematics of the Universe is at the University of Tokyo. Our center here is at Kyushu University. There is a center at the Osaka University on immunology. There is a center dedicated in material science, which is within the National Institute of Material Science in Tsukuba. So all these centers have different mission and different objectives. Lately, in the 2012, MEXT, the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, established 3 more centers. Those centers are not as large as the previous 6 centers, and they are dedicated on sleep. Very interesting objective here. They are dedicated on the origins of life on the earth. They are dedicated on organic molecules and plant chemistry. So the Kyushu, Illinois Center started in 2010, December 2010. Kyushu University and the University of Illinois had a long relationship, collaborative relationship, since almost 2005 within the so-called Institute of Hydrogen Industrial Use and Storage, which is the Hydrogenius Center. This center was established at Kyushu University by the Ministry of Economics, Trade and Industry, METI, in order to help with materials research on technologies that are related with the hydrogen economy. It is an engineering center that was established within Kyushu University specifically on materials and hydrogen and storage. And so researchers from the University of Illinois worked in this center. I myself worked at this Hydrogenius Center. And when MEXT came in with the so-called WPI initiative, then we sat together, faculty from Illinois, faculty from Kyushu University, and we conceived this proposal to MEXT. And in the end, we created this Center for Carbon Neutral Energy Research. So it is a center that came from a culture of collaboration between those two universities since almost 2005. And nowadays, Eisner has a wonderful building in the new campus of Kyushu University. It's been delivered in January 2013. It's an open building. It's one roof, as I say, and this is the idea to promote a new mindset, a mindset of a WPI center that involves collaboration. And we initiated the so-called Eisner CO2 event. We have it every afternoon. It is coffee and collaboration. Since we are dealing with CO2, that's why we call it coffee and collaboration. We have a nice open area in our center there where we service coffee. And of course, we try to promote what WPI is all about, to fuse the disciplines and get the researchers to talk. This is another view of the Eisner building within this beautiful Ito campus of Kyushu University. And as I said, the center was inaugurated, this building was inaugurated on January 29. Here you can see we have a congratulatory address by Dr. Monterey Gardiner of the US Department of Energy, who the US Department of Energy takes a great interest in our center, as you will see pretty soon, because we promote and we try to advance research that is of interest in the energy efficiency and renewable energy department of the DOE. Here we had Professor George Grabtree from the Argonne National Laboratory delivering a keynote address. As you know, Professor Grabtree is the head of DOE Hub on energy storage here at Argonne National Laboratory at Illinois. This is our building, the one that I've shown you, and as I'd like to say today, that we are grateful to the government of Japan because they gave us another $20 million to develop a second building. We've been a center 3-year-old and we almost filled up this center, so the government of Japan, MEXT, helped us to expand and have additional laboratory space. So Eisner has expanded, and it is a unit that has a long future within Kyushu University. And Eisner is a center that was created within the so-called Green Innovation and Sustainability Initiative of the government of Japan. This is a brief summary of the Fourth Science and Technology Basic Plan of Japan, which is a plan that describes the science and research objectives of Japan for the next 5 years. This plan was revised after the Fukushima disaster, and as you see, there are 3 major innovations here: the green innovation related with energy, life innovation related with the biological sciences, the quality of life, and of course innovation of systems, societal systems, industrial systems, commercial systems, so that to advance the economics of the Japanese society. So Eisner is part of this green innovation and sustainability. And because we are an energy institute, I'd like to introduce you first what is the energy landscape in Japan right now, and then I'm going to introduce you to what is the structure and the research initiatives within Eisner. This is the picture of energy in Japan predating the Fukushima accident. As you see, in 2007, for instance, Japan power was 26% nuclear, and the plan was by 2030 to be 53% nuclear. As you know, after the Fukushima accident, this is no longer the case. In fact, today, there is no any nuclear reactor operating. So Japan is interested in the area of energy, and in fact, this is a pressing and challenging issue. So that's how one can view Eisner as a contributor to this energy problem, energy challenge that Japan is facing today. And in fact, here this slide summarizes the so-called energy-related concerns of Japan. At the very beginning, I'm trying to describe briefly the world trends. For instance, fossil fuels continue to be a primary energy source. This is a world trend. There is an economic rise of emerging nations, an advance of economic globalization. Nuclear power continues to be a major electricity supply. There is a world trend of introduction of renewables for better performance, reduced cost, and improved stability. There is a hidden competition about natural resources, so that those are world trends. And here there is a summary of concerns. For instance, a major concern is direct and indirect damage due to the earthquake that we had for the accident for the nuclear power stations. There is a decreasing energy self-sufficiency. There is an increasing trade deficit due to soaring prices in fossil fuels. And also there is an aging and decreasing populations. Right? Japan, the projections are that the population will be reduced by 30% by 2050. This will impact the energy challenge also, as we will see. So those are major concerns of the Japanese government today. And the energy policy now, the major, I'd say, framework within which Japan tries to develop its energy policy today is efficiency improvement and energy conservation. Those are two pillar points of the energy policy. Facilitation of renewable energy introduction. Promote clean and efficient use of natural gas. As we all know, there is now a bounty of natural gas in the United States. So if we take advantage of this cheap natural gas and promote power generation through natural gas, it's a step ahead in reducing CO2 emission through new, more efficient power generation cycles, such as the triple combined cycle. Rebuild mid and long-term greenhouse gas emission reduction scenario. Japan is always interested in playing a leading role in the world on CO2 emission reduction. For instance, there is this ambitious plan, 80% reduction from the 1990 levels by the year 2050. In fact, this is somewhat an agreement amongst the industrialized nations, such a drastic reduction, so that to have a 50% reduction across the globe, in other words, to cut the balance for reductions that non-industrialized nations are willing to make. And of course, Japan is interested in actively disseminating quality energy technologies in the major Southeast Asia areas and nations. In other words, Japan wants to be a leader in carbon neutral energy technologies so that to impact the markets of Asia. A few pieces of information about how the energy mix is in Japan. As you see, petroleum constitutes a major source of primary energy supply in Japan. Anytime there is a problem in the Gulf, there is a problem regarding energy in Japan. When prices got increased 2 years ago, Japan sent about $100 billion extra cash for primary energy supplies. So this is a serious problem. There is almost no solar, almost no wind, and very small biomass. So very small use of renewables in the primary energy sources. And this is a piece of information. Japan needs about 17 hexajoules of primary energy supply. To put this into perspective, the United States needs about 100. And this is the the pie, the slice of where the emissions come from, the CO2 emissions, as they see here, they come from power generation, 46%. They come from the transportation sector, 21%, and of course they come from the industrial sector. So any future attempt to reduce CO2 emissions has certainly to focus in these two areas: power generation, industrial sector, and transportation sector, if we want to have this ambitious 80% reduction of CO2 emissions. In our center, we have the so-called energy analysis research cluster that tries to understand the balance in a mixed energy portfolio amongst the solution pathways, energy solution pathways. And the question that we had from the very beginning, is it possible to achieve power generation in Japan by using renewables? And from the initial data that we have and the initial analysis that we carried out, we may say that we can produce about 1.5 hexajoules of energy, power, electricity, by using renewables. If I translated it in a percentage point, I would say that Japan has a capability of about 50% of its power generation to come from renewables. But again, it is not there. This is just a potential, and Japan has to work in that direction. So here is Eisner. As Eisner, we spent our first 3 years in order to analyze this energy landscape and see how can we achieve this 80% reduction of CO2 emissions by the year 2050. What are the possibilities that we have, and what is the energy mix that we can explore? This is the parameter space, as I would say. This is, of course, a busy slide. I can talk about this for about 1 hour, but I will give you in a few seconds the major takeaway points. Here is the energy supply: central power production, hydrogen production, low carbon fuel. Here is the energy use: transportation, residential and commercial, industrial. And over here is the concept of smart communities, in other words, distributed energy generation. So to be able to slash CO2 emissions, we need to focus on reduced intensity of fossil fuels. Reduced carbon intensity of fossil fuels, for instance, it's natural gas. As you know, using natural gas, you emit lesser amounts of CO2 than using coal, for instance. So this is mixed low carbon fuel production. So reduced fossil fuel carbon intensity, using conservation and increased energy efficiency in central power production by using new concepts for energy generation like IGFC or the so-called natural gas triple combined cycle, and of course using CO2 capture anywhere we can have it. As you see, CO2 capture and sequestration anywhere it is produced. Again, low carbon fuel usage, increased efficiency in power generation, and CO2 capture. This is a promising scenario.
Leave that slide. Now, the Energy Analysis Division really talked about this as the whole picture. Is Eisner actively doing technical research in each of those nodes?
Very good question. No.
Okay.
This is, as I said, the parameter space.
Okay.
Eisner, has limited resources, cannot do everything. The Eisner areas are underlined. For instance, advanced heat pump, advanced lighting, hydrogen, mixed low carbon fuel production, hydrogen production, electrolysis, central power generation, SOFCs, natural gas combined cycle.
Okay.
So this is the parameter space, and Eisner is targeting some aspects of this parameter space.
Okay.
Of course, the energy analysis division is looking to tell us what has to happen, what types of combinations we need to get out of here in order to achieve this reduction. And once we get this information from the energy analysis division, then we plan to reorganize, refocus, and redistribute resources. So that's the idea.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so again, our energy analysis is reducing. I asked them, give us a very aggressive scenario where we can achieve this ambitious, I'd say, reduction of CO2. So here we have a 75% reduction by 2050. And as I told you in the previous slide, this can be achieved by lowering the carbon intensity in power generation, increasing the efficiency in the industrial sector, and introducing hydrogen in the transportation sector. So we have this information, therefore in Eisner we are trying to promote the research that will enable technologies related with the fuel cell vehicle. It is very interesting, as you see here, 13% reduction of CO2 will come from demand decrease due to demographics that we said. This is something that we didn't believe at the very beginning. Right? So this is just a scenario, right? We are exploring the scenarios, other scenarios, less aggressive and so on and so forth, in order to see where we should put resources. Of course, based on our initial understanding, we developed an institute roadmap, what types of technologies. Here are these technologies on the top. What types of technologies we are going to pursue. Over here is our research thematic clusters and what type of research we are going to carry out in order to address these types of scenario. Again, this is a busy slide. I'll pass it right now. I can talk to you later. And as I said, reducing CO2 emissions can be done by attacking the transportation sector. This is the area of using fuel cell vehicles. And in order to use a carbon neutral fuel cell transportation sector, in order to enable, one needs to produce hydrogen. You can produce hydrogen by using the so-called artificial photosynthesis. You need issues of catalysis. You need to understand catalysis. Therefore, we have a thematic research cluster on catalysis. Artificial photosynthesis is a very difficult project right now. We may need to produce hydrogen from other sources, like coal gasification, for instance. Then you need to sequester the CO2 that you produce. Then we need to have transport of the hydrogen to the refueling stations. We need to understand how we can set an infrastructure. We need to develop hydrogen compatible materials. We need the so-called next generation fuel cells, because this is the proton exchange membrane fuel cell technology. We need to store hydrogen on the fuel cell and so on and so forth. So this is a scenario for the transportation sector. So having done this introduction, now I'm going to focus on Eisner. This is the organizational chart of Eisner. As you see, here we have the administration, the director, and the director is accessed directly by any unit within the administration structure. This is what we wanted to do. We wanted to avoid hierarchy. We wanted the director to be accessed by any administrative unit. I would like to emphasize that there is an external advisory committee for the institute. I will talk to this in a little bit. We have the so-called internal programs review committee to review all of our programs at any instant of time. And our external advisory committee is made of an international body of distinguished scholars. The chair is Professor Honor Adrian. He is from Arizona State University, member of the National Academy of Engineering. Deborah Myers from the Argonne National Laboratory, director of the Fuel Cells Division. Robert Finlay, he is with the Illinois State Geological Survey, and he is directing the Midwest Sequestration Consortium, which is one of the leading projects of the Fossil Energy Office of the U.S. Department of Energy. And in fact, they are sequestering CO2 right now in Decatur, Illinois. They are sequestering all CO2 that is produced by the ADM company. As you know, this is one of the major companies here in the U.S. Of course, again, we've got Kevin Ott from Los Alamos National Lab, Petros from Tohoku University. The energy analysis, the external advisory committee reviews the institute and provides advice and consultation. Those are our basic research thematic clusters, divisions as we call them. As you see, we have a research cluster on catalysis, we have a research cluster on fuel cells, we have a research cluster on materials, thermal science and engineering, on CO2 storage, on hydrogen storage, on hydrogen production, and of course on energy analysis. Again, there is an overlap amongst these clusters because catalysis, for instance, is involved in storage, it is involved in CO2 capture, is involved in hydrogen interactions with materials. So those clusters collaborate amongst themselves within this beautiful Eisner building that we have. We have 26 major principal investigators, and as you see, it is a mix here of international scholars. John Kilner is from the Imperial College London. Professor Kirchheim is from the University of Göttingen. Professor Robertson is the Dean of Engineering from the University of Wisconsin. Professor Tuller is from MIT. So it is a mixed international list group of people here, and those in yellow are our own principal investigators, organically grown from within Eisner. Those are the major key investigators within Eisner with international recognition who set the research agenda. Again, Eisner is pushing to increase the female population at Kyushu University. Here is a list of some of our major researchers in Eisner. Our percentage of female population there is about 11%, which far exceeds that of Kyushu University. And this is a personnel summary. Right now we have about 150 researchers, both at Kyushu and Illinois. Illinois is a satellite of the major institute at Kyushu, and we work essentially with postdocs. There are right now about 25 postdocs throughout Eisner, and we interview, we run biannual recruitment calls for postdocs, and we try to increase this number as much as we can. Now I would like to navigate you through some of our research initiatives in Eisner. As I told you, one of our initiatives is to produce hydrogen through photocatalysis. And photocatalysis, essentially light hits a semiconducting material here, an oxide, and it releases an electron. This electron is used with water to cause electrolysis, for instance, and get hydrogen. And we work on all aspects. We work on understanding devices. We work on understanding free surfaces. And we work on understanding catalysis. And as you see, our groups are Western and Japanese researchers. We are mixed, and we are working in concert. Here I would like to mention that we are interested in this area very much, but the roadblock is very intense here. The roadblock right now, the efficiency of photocatalysis is almost less than 0.1%. In order to talk about technology, this number needs to be pushed 10%. This is really a long-term project. Perhaps it is a 2040, 2050 project, but we are a research institute and we have to pursue research that perhaps is not of high impact in the short term, but may be a disruptive technology that may come if we are successful. Because if we manage to produce hydrogen out of the sunlight, then that will solve the world energy problems essentially. This is something that we haven't published it yet, but it is something that I would like to brag a little bit. Here, in the issue of photocatalysis, the basic problem is the charge separation. Once you take an electron out of an oxide, here the oxide is potassium tantalate. Once you take the electron, the purpose is to be able to take this electron and cause it to form current. The issue is, the traditional problem is that this electron tries to recombine, go back to its hole, and therefore you don't have a current. Here, this is a wonderful collaboration between Kyushu University, Illinois University researchers, and Imperial College. We are talking about internationalization of research. The experiment was done at Kyushu, the numerical simulation was done at Illinois, and Kilner studied what happens with the first layer of the tantalum atoms there. So what they developed the so-called mechanical switch. In other words, they allow the electron to move into this organic layer, a film layer that they put above the tantalate, but at the same time, once it passes, it cannot return. So this is called the switch that they managed to do. They are working now on publishing this wonderful piece of work. We are working, trying to use photovoltaics to push the hydrogen efficiencies higher. Here is one of my colleagues, Professor Adachi, who, as you see, managed to increase this photoelectron conversion coefficient from 1% to 7%. If we get this to be 10%, then we talk about technology. And this is what Eisner has done. You see, you have a concentrated research grant, a research grant that is characterized by longevity, and then you manage each year to increase your efficiencies there. And a spin-off of what we are doing is energy conservation by working on organic LEDs. And here again, Professor Adachi managed to push quantum electroluminescence efficiency to almost above 20%. And this paper appeared in Nature in 2020 by working between the singlet and triplet excited states in order to minimize the energy gap by design. And of course, as I told you from the very beginning, we have roadmaps in the Institute, how this division is working. So for instance, we were thinking that by the end of 2020, we'll get efficiency 7%. We've already achieved this efficiency on photovoltaics. Quantum efficiency, 80%. We are now at 20%. So this is good progress within the Institute. There is a wonderful division also on catalytic material transformations. This is Professor Ogo's group. He works with Professor Outsfuss at Illinois. They are both world-renowned experts on catalysis. There is a wonderful and nice competition amongst themselves, the Kyushu, Illinois competition, but they are working together. And what we managed to achieve so far is to mimic biology in activating hydrogen. Again, we need, when we have a fuel cell, we need to have catalysis in order to get the proton out of the molecular hydrogen. And in order to do that, we need to activate hydrogen. And here, the activation is mimicking biology. What Professor Ogo managed to do, he designed a synthetic analog of the active side of a natural hydrogenase. So he analyzed, biochemists in his lab analyzed how a hydrogenase activates hydrogen, and he designed a synthetic analog of this activation, and this is a paper that appeared in Science, in fact, this year. Now, Professor Ogo is telling me that he managed to have this achievement here, 2013. By mid-2020s, he tells me that he will get this synthetic analog to be robust and in order to be ready for technology. So again, we are talking a 10-year span here, but that's how it takes to go from the lab to technology. Here now is my area. As Professor Dasser told you, I am in the area of materials. I'm working within Eisner to understand what is the way by which hydrogen degrades the mechanical properties of materials. One of the issues is hydrogen accelerated fatigue. Fatigue of materials is the failure of materials that we get if the loading gets repeated, cyclic loading. And what happens is that what hydrogen does, it accelerates the way by material fatigues. This is, if we call a measure of fatigue, this is, in the absence of hydrogen, this is load, cycling loading as increases. The damage caused by fatigue is accelerated in the absence of hydrogen, but here is what hydrogen does. It further accelerates that fatigue, and we found out by putting a few ppms of oxygen within the hydrogen mix, then we find out that this onset of hydrogen-induced acceleration is pushed to higher and higher loads. So in other words, we found out that we can mitigate this hydrogen-induced acceleration by putting just a few ppms of oxygen in the mixture. We have a CO2 capture and utilization division. We want to capture CO2, as I told you. This is something that we need to take into consideration if we are to reduce CO2 emissions. We are doing research here that is addressing fundamental issues related with CO2 captures that will enable sequestration. And we also work in the conversion of CO2 into a useful product. For instance, the concept is as follows. We have renewable energy. This renewable energy can be fed into an electrochemical device, and this electrochemical device, it can get and reduce CO2 into CO. And that CO can be used, for instance, as a syngas, as a town gas, or can be used in order to produce methanol, for instance, a fuel. We can take CO2 and turn it into a fuel. And of course, to do that, you need catalysis. And here again, another wonderful collaboration between Illinois and Kyushu. They developed a catalyst, the so-called PBI catalyst, by which they are telling me they managed to achieve the largest current, the largest efficiency in transforming CO2 into CO, and this appeared on the cover of the Advanced Energy Materials this year. At the same time, this technology has been used for the fuel cell catalysis, and again, Professor Nakashima at Kyushu University and Paul Kennis at Illinois, they managed to devise the most durable electrode for fuel cells that we have today, they are telling me, based on carbon nanotubes. We are working on sequestration, as I told you. We are interested if we sequester CO2 underneath the ocean, if it leaks, what happens, to monitor CO2. I think I went ahead one slide. This is the next slide. So this is a slide that shows how we can understand the behavior of CO2 when it's sequestered underneath the subseabed in the earth. Here is a numerical simulation, and here is experiments of CO2, supercritical CO2, that is pushed inside the porous material. These experiments are carried out at Illinois. Those are carried out at Kyushu. We want to understand the interactions of CO2 with the liquid brine and, of course, the porous structure of the material. Here we want to monitor if there is leakage of CO2. This is a project where we participate, National Environmental Research Council of UK, where artificially they inserted CO2 under the subseabed, and the Kyushu University researchers, Professor Shitashima, measured the distribution of CO2 just 2 meters above the seafloor and about 50 centimeters above the ocean the ocean surface. Monitoring technologies, in other words, research for monitoring technologies. Since I'm talking about Eisner, allow me to brag a little bit. We got the Sumiya Award this year. The Sumiya Award is given to material scientists who come from 2 continents, on research projects on 2 continents. Here we have 3 continents: Professor Tuller at MIT, Professor Kilner at Imperial, and Professor Ishihara at Kyushu University. This has happened because of Eisner. Eisner brought the 3 continents together at Kyushu University. Our students also receive awards. I'm very pleased to report this slide here. We won the DOE, Toyota, Mercedes, NREL Award about designing a hydrogen distribution network in the northeastern United States. This is the northeastern United States, and the Kyushu team, our team, won the first award. We are trying to internationalize our environment. We are working with the Sandia National Laboratories, the Livermore Valley Open Campus, which is about 1 hour east of here. The laboratories, Sandia National Laboratories, are opening up for the international community. So in other words, they moved the fence so that people can go there without passports. And Dr. Sommerday, a research scientist of this laboratory, is the lead PI of our hydrogen structural materials division. This is an unprecedented, I think, development. A United States laboratory is working with a Japanese research institute. And in fact, a scientist from the US National Laboratory is leading a research thematic cluster in Japan. And I would say we are everywhere. We are collaborating with the entire world, as you see here, both in Europe and the United States. And we are trying to reach out with the society. We try to bring Eisner to take, in the radar of the energy stakeholders. We organized a symposium at Tokyo on the Japan-US energy collaboration. And as you see here, our ambassador, John Roos, addressed the symposium here, and he emphasized how important it is to bring the younger generations of Japan and US to talk to one another. And as director of Eisner, I cannot overemphasize how important it is the younger generations to begin talking to one another. I think this is the key. I believe this is a fundamental, a key concept for any change that may happen in the scientific exchange and collaboration between the 2 countries. It is the younger generation needs to be educated differently today. And hopefully, Eisner is doing that. We are working closely with the US Department of Energy, the Fuel Cells Technology Program. We get advice from this program. In fact, we are grateful to this program because it helps us somewhat see where the relevance of our research can be located and identified. And we are ambitious. We have many initiatives in mind. For instance, we want to bring postdocs here. And in fact, usually the concept of a postdoc is attached to a professor and works with a specific professor. Here we want to have a free postdoc, a postdoc that will go around, see the institute. He wants to work at project A, wants to work at project B. This somewhat brings down the barriers amongst the faculty. This is something that definitely we want to do. And of course, we are seeding new projects based on the information that we get from the Energy Analysis Division. We try to seed, we try to explore new projects. Our idea is that 10% of our projects must fail. If you don't fail, means you don't try to do what we call something that can be disruptive. So failure is good. In fact, one of our members of our external advisory committee, Kevin Ott, has said, tell your scientists in the laboratory that if they don't show failure, means that they are not working on an impactful projects. And this is a message that I always try to pass across. Of course, this is a bit difficult in Japan. It is much easier here in the US, but this is the philosophy by which we are working. And of course, again, our internal programs review committee is a committee, I'd like to say, that keeps us focused, keeps us to have a healthy research portfolio. And with that, I thank you for your attention. This is my last slide. We brought our libraries together. It is very interesting how the librarians are interested in exploring new concepts of librarianship across the Pacific to bring information, how the information can be brought to researchers at Kyushu University, for instance, information from Illinois or vice versa. In fact, now they are on their own, they are working. Kyushu librarians are visiting Illinois and back and forth. They are creating various portals so that Kyushu researchers can just with a stroke can access the Illinois resources and vice versa. I enjoy meeting with them. The librarians, as you know, are the most important people when it comes to high quality research. Unless you have a good library, you cannot do good research. So I'm very excited that the librarians are working with us. And with that, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So thank you very much for your presentation. We were both in Tokyo last week because I've been on the program committee for the WPI program since 2007, since the beginning. It's really wonderful to see how Eisner has, just taken off and already started to blossom. I want people to understand the scale. This is a basically minimum $10 million a year grant for 10 years with a possible 5-year extension after that. So we're talking about $100 million of government money that's flowing into this. In addition, Eisner is bringing in money from other sources now.
That's right, that's right. Eisner leverages this money from the government in order to expand its portfolio. In fact, Eisner, if I recall well, participates at a percentage of about 14%, 15% of the Kyushu University research funding is through Eisner. It shows how big the pie has become. It is not only the $10 to $15 million, it is bigger than that. In fact, it is almost twice as much.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so sure enough, I think what you listed 230 or 240 published papers last year alone. I mean, something
about, yes.
On that neighborhood. So this is a major effort. I'm curious, oops, how do I keep my microphone on? So if there's one thing you'd like to see more of in the program, what would it be?
That's a very nice question. Okay, I think at this stage of our program, we just started. What I would like to have is to become more focused. One aspect is to become more focused. In other words, I'm waiting for our energy analysis division to somewhat identify perhaps 5 energy solution pathways and then redirect our resources. So somewhat we started ad hoc at this point. We say artificial photosynthesis is a disruptive technology. Let's pursue it. Or materials under severe environments is something that the US is interested and is pursuing. Let us pursue it also at Eisner. So we started by doing what is out there. Now, if we get more focus and redirect our resources, I think we'll make our center more efficient. And
so they're going to do this analysis really based on economic impact as well as on the technology itself, the science impact.
That's right. That's right. And the point is that these energy analysis is within Eisner. They talk every day with the researchers. They talk with Professor Ishihara and they ask him, where is your catalysis now? How do you activate hydrogen? What are the perspectives here? Is it in 5 years? Is it in 10 years? What do you think? So there is a very close contact amongst the researchers and the analysts.
Okay.
I would say.
Excellent. Let's open the floor. Go ahead, Martin.
I'm Martin Maxwell from the University of California office. It's a fantastic, widespread research, and really looking forward to the result. So I'd like to know, 10 years from now, what could we see? You know, how many achievements you are expecting in 10 years?
Very nice question. I can enumerate a few achievements that I want. Okay, first let's start from my area. I think if we develop a hydrogen-resistant steel, and we can tell the public, look, this is the steel, this is the solution, we solve this problem. I think this will be something that it is in fact impactful. We are not there yet. But we are working on that. We try to identify mitigation strategies by working on the basic science. So we have, I believe we have the finest team in the world at Kyushu University right now, specifically on this problem. Right? So this is something sophisticated, alloys that can be safe and reliable. So 10 years down the road, if we do this, not only Japan will benefit, the entire world, the United States will benefit out of this. If we push artificial photosynthesis beyond this roadblock, right? The roadblock is 0.1%. If we come up with something disruptive there and go away from this 1%, I think that will be something that will be, I wouldn't say at this point disruptive, but very encouraging, that basic research is impactful that we are doing. If we activate hydrogen, right, in a robust way and lasting way, this will be very impactful also. And let me brag a little bit. Professor Ogo, who is one of my wonderful colleagues that I have there, is telling me, Petros, I will do it. So hopefully we will do it, because I trust him that he will do it. So here are 3 technologies that we may impact in the future, and in a very serious way, I
was wondering if there's any research going on at Stanford on a similar area.
I should open that to other people in the audience. This is not really my area, so, you know, we have the Precourt Energy Institute at Stanford, and there are various centers related to that, the Tomcat Energy research initiative inside that. So there's a lot of work going on at Stanford. Do you know the group?
The solid oxide fuel cells.
Oh, right, Professor Prince's work.
Professor Prince's work is one of the finest, very distinguished, faculty working on cutting edge areas. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a new question. So not that. So I was amazed by the work you did to push the fusion of different technology to bring new ideas. I'm wondering what you did to really incentivize the scientists and the people in the center to make the fusion happen. I mean, like you did a lot to bring experts, scientists from different fields together and exchange their ideas. I think that's facilitation. So what did you do to incentivize them to do the fusion of technology?
Okay, the easiest way to do that is if you have money. You see, money helps, right?
I didn't ask directly, but yeah.
So money helps, and so the nice thing is the structure of the WPI is such that MEXT wants the director to be a powerful figure in the institute, the director to be in charge of how resources are distributed. So being vested with that authority, of course, I always consult with the associate directors and the science steering committee of the institute, right? We can channel resources where we need. So we say researcher A and researcher B, if you work together, you will have this money. Or give us a proposal. Give us a proposal on what you can do together and we will get you money. And that's what happens, right? So we got the numerical analysts at Illinois to use the Blue Waters at Illinois, a petascale machine, right? With the group of Professor Ishihara at Kyushu University who does the experiments. We got them to talk and we funded this effort internally. And that, prospered. So that's the easy way to go, right? Through money. The other way, the most difficult way, I believe, is to get the people to talk to each other, right? This is not as easy. This requires, I think, build up of trust, build up that value can be added in a prospective collaboration. And this is not easy for people to see it, especially if they come from foreign cultures. And I believe this is one of the key elements of the WPI program, to get those two foreign cultures to talk. I'm trying as much as I can. I'm trying by getting coffee together with scientists, by drinking beer together, by going to dinner together. Those are cultural, I would say.
Do you have many instances where you'll see a proposal and say, you should add someone from this different specialization to that?
Yes, we do. We do, yes. We say, I always get any proposal I get, I pass it to the Internal Programs Review Committee in order to get an advice from them. And for instance, sometimes they identify another faculty. For instance, in this case that I talked to the Illinois and the Kyushu faculty, they identified Professor Kilner from the Imperial College. And Professor Kilner uses this LEAS, as we call, right, low energy ion spectroscopy, to check where the atoms, just the first layer of atoms, right, in this tantalate, potassium tantalate, and he used LEAS technology in order to identify, yes, indeed, tantalum atoms are there and participate in this switch. So we brought the Imperial College because I was told that you've got one of the best in this area, bring him in.
I think that your question's really interesting because even in a U.S. university, it's really hard to get over the walls between fields. We've done a lot of this with the research centers at Stanford that do bring together money and distribute to people in different disciplines. Japan was much more severely siloed than the U.S. was. And this is the biggest change that I think I've seen in Japanese universities in the last 30 years. Easily.
I have a question. This is a very huge project, so I think commitment of government is very important, and also investment from the private sector is also very important. How are you going to get money from investment from a private sector?
This is a very interesting. we were talking about this with Professor Dasser just an hour ago. Yes. Now, we are, as I say, a mission-oriented institute. We are an institute that tries to drive research that will impact engineering. So we try to come in contact with the industrial sector and tell them that they will get value out of us. So up to this point, this effort is done by individual researchers. We haven't done it in a way that is systematic at the institute level. So this is a project that we are working and we need to work. In fact, this is a project, a relationship that we need to establish, and it is vital, as we have been advised by the WPI program committee, for instance. Right now we are doing it on individual researcher basis. We are not doing it at an institution level, but it is very important.
Yeah.
I'm interested in research strategy, and I'm interested in your example where you said you'd like to focus maybe in 5 key areas. So I'm just asking hypothetically, let's say those 5 areas get defined by some process. What happens to the researchers? Do you go out and find new researchers and other researchers are left to go somewhere else? Or what?
Well, the issue here is that researchers have to either to redirect or they will move right? That's very important. And in fact, this is the entire notion of the WPI, that this will be a robust organization, and once it identifies the areas that needs to move forward, has to redistribute the resources. This is a paradigm shift in the Japanese university culture, that we move based on the objectives and the productivity, rather than the classical system in which the faculty work on their own.
I think one of the interesting things about your center is the international connections, because you see, if you're moving on the world scale, that is a very good possibility that you may move into something that is an extension of what you've been doing somewhere else. Really, one country is probably not sufficient scale to have people move around successfully. Previous programs in Japan would have a fixed limit of 5 years or 10 years. And at the end of the 5 years, you'd have some very gifted people who are suddenly stuck with no place to go in their careers. So I do think the international nature of the center feeds this well.
Precisely, yes. And also keep in mind, in our culture here in the US, for instance, right, in our major research centers, right, usually it is healthy for a center to have a 10% turnaround, right, annually. So, in fact, the Satellite Institute at Illinois, at the Satellite Institute, this is happening. We seed new projects, and about 10% of the faculty, they have to redefine themselves, right? So now we try to do that in Japan as well. Mm-hmm.
Good.
Could you say something about CO2 sequestration? I saw a talk at the USGS a while ago, and it looked, how about I call it a hard problem?
Yes.
I can't quite tell whether it's going to work. I mean, this was a combination of science and economics.
A very hard problem, yes, indeed, especially for Japan, right? In Japan, the CO2 is considered seriously, because as I told you, Japan really is interested in slashing CO2 emissions. In fact, play a key and leading role in the world. So CO2 is in their radar, CO2 sequestration. So there is already one side at the northern Japan, in the island of Hokkaido, Tomakomai, that has been chosen as an experimental site where they will sequester CO2 while they have hydrogen production. It will be coal gasification for hydrogen production. At the same time, the CO2 will be sequestered. So it will start pretty soon as an experimental program. So they want to do it. I mean, it is something that they consider as a country, Japan needs to pursue it. So we thought Eisner should participate in this effort through fundamental science. And from what my fluid mechanicians are telling me, this is a wonderful problem for fluid mechanics. It is a three-phase flow: porous media, brine, supercritical CO2. This is an area that hasn't been investigated, difficult area. So as far as basic science is concerned, it is a wonderful area to expand. And at the same time, hopefully we will be useful in telling the real world, right, what are the best aspects of sequestration. For instance, is it trapping? Is it dissolution? Is it mineralization at the end? So basic science issues. As far as we are concerned, as far as Japan is concerned, again, to close, it is of interest to the Japanese government to pursue that. Yes, again, it is a difficult problem. Yes, indeed.
We've politicized it here, right? It's kind of one of those energy problems that's become sort of associated with political boundaries. I'm not sure what's happening in the U.S.
Here, I mean, we are pursuing this type.
Really?
So, yeah, there are 4 projects, I think, in the U.S. that are pursued. Right now, for instance, I know the one at Illinois, the Midwestern project. They've already pumping CO2. Yes, underground.
To underground water.
Yes, in fact, they have 2 wells there. They have 2 wells about 2 kilometers deep. One is the one that is pumping it down, and the other is equipped with monitors and
Okay.
sensors to see what happens.
See what's happening.
Yes, and it goes really, really down, very almost. We sequestered in CO2 in brine that was there 3 million years ago, still is there.
Okay.
So it is a very safe place at Illinois when they are doing it.
Okay.
Yes, very
Okay.
safe.
Good. Another question.
CO2 in the brine, it really, it's a nasty acid for the steel, and so when you get the hydrogen problem solved, you can work on the CO2 problem.
Yeah. Remember, this is an institute that goes, in fact, it's a permanent institute at Kyushu University, as far as the president, Arikawa of Kyushu University, is concerned. That's what he says. Kyushu University will take over after the WPI program expires. So,
Causing earthquakes by disrupting that.
yes.
And
yes.
you have plenty of those already.
Yes, that's a serious problem, and again, an interesting basic science problem, right? Yes, that's an issue. So that's why we said let's work on converting CO2, right, into a useful product.
Other questions? If not, we've got some refreshments outside, and we're delighted that you would come here this afternoon despite all the trouble with traffic and so forth. And please join me one more time. Professor Sofronis, thank you very much.
Thank you. George Grabtree from the Argonne National Laboratory delivering a keynote address. As you know, Professor Grabtree is the head of DOE Hub on energy storage here at Argonne National Laboratory at Illinois. This is our building, the one that I've shown you, and as I'd like to say today, that we are grateful to the government of Japan because they gave us another $20 million to develop a second building. We've been a center, 3-year-old, and we almost filled up this center, so the government of Japan, MEXT, helped us to expand and have additional laboratory space. So Eisner has expanded, and it is a unit that has a long future within Kyushu University. And Eisner is a center that was created within the so-called Green Innovation and Sustainability Initiative of the government of Japan. This is a brief summary of the Fourth Science and Technology Basic Plan of Japan, which is a plan that describes the science and research objectives of Japan for the next 5 years. This plan was revised after the Fukushima disaster, and as you see, there are 3 major innovations here: the green innovation related with energy, life innovation related to language of this institute is English. Although this institute is located in Japan, inside the Ito campus of Kyushu University, the official language is English. The administrative staff, the secretaries are talking English there. The WPI centers are spread throughout Japan. Those are, right now, they are 10 centers throughout the entire Japan. Our center here, the International Institute for Carbon Neutral Energy Research, is at Kyushu University, which is next to the city of Fukuoka. And those centers that have been established are listed here. Those are the first 6 centers that were established in 2007. And all centers are within major Japanese universities, and each one is dedicated to a specific discipline. For instance, the Institute for the Physics and Mathematics of the Universe is at the University of Tokyo. Our center here is at Kyushu University. There is a center at the Osaka University on immunology. There is a center dedicated in material science, which is within the National Institute of Material Science in Tsukuba. So all these centers have different mission and different objectives. Lately, in the 2012, MEXT, the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, established 3 more centers. Those centers are not as large as the Thank you for the invitation to come here at your center and present this effort that we started jointly, the United States and Japan together, in order to promote what we say, powering the future and internationalizing research. Today I will talk about the world premiere initiative, WPI, which is a major program of the Japan Ministry of Education, Culture, Technology, Sports and Science. And the purpose of this initiative, the WPI initiative, is to establish an international research environment within Japan, to internationalize the Japanese university culture, in other words, to advance cutting-edge interdisciplinary research and fusion, as we call, to fuse the disciplines, and at the same time, to reform the Japanese university system and change the culture within which research is carried out. And this is related, this is concerned with criteria for faculty hiring, promotion, compensation, much in the same way as it is happening at major US universities like Stanford or the University of Illinois. I'd like to emphasize that the official previous 6 centers, and they are dedicated on sleep, very interesting objective here. They are dedicating on the origins of life on the earth. They are dedicated on organic molecules and plant chemistry. So the Kyushu, Illinois Center started in 2010, December 2010. Kyushu University and the University of Illinois had a long relationship, collaborative relationship, since almost 2005 within the so-called Institute of Hydrogen Industrial Use and Storage, which is the Hydrogenius Center. This center was established at Kyushu University by the Ministry of Economics, Trade and Industry, METI, in order to help with materials research on technologies that are related with the hydrogen economy. It is an engineering center that was established within Kyushu University specifically on materials and hydrogen and storage. And so researchers from the University of Illinois worked in this center. I myself worked at this Hydrogenius Center. And when MEXT came in with the so-called WPI initiative, then we sat together, faculty from Illinois, faculty from Kyushu University, and we conceived this proposal to MEXT. And in the end, we created this Center for Carbon Neutral Energy Research. So it is a center that came from a culture of collaboration between those 2 universities since almost 2005. And nowadays, Eisner has a wonderful building in the new campus of Kyushu University. It's been delivered in January 2013. It's an open building. It's one roof, as I say, and this is the idea to promote a new mindset, a mindset of a WPI center that involves collaboration. And we initiated the so-called Eisner CO2 event. We have it every afternoon. It is coffee and collaboration. Since we are dealing with CO2, that's why we call it coffee and collaboration. We have a nice open area in our center there where we service coffee. And of course, we try to promote what WPI is all about, to fuse the disciplines and get the researchers to talk. This is another view of the Eisner building within this beautiful Ito campus of Kyushu University. And as I said, the center was inaugurated, this building was inaugurated on January 29. Here you can see we have a congratulatory address by Dr. Monterey Gardiner of the US Department of Energy, who the US Department of Energy takes a great interest in our center, as you will see pretty soon, because we promote and we try to advance research that is of interest in the energy efficiency and renewable energy department of the DOE. Here we had Professor